So, Paul, we set out with a challenge to our constituents through Facebook that we were going to ask them to ask us questions on Facebook, and then we would reply to their questions.
Mm-hmm.
And we've, of all the questions that we received this week, we've picked 5 questions that we're going to answer collectively, starting from the easiest to perhaps the most complicated. Let's see. So, Gordon and Blythe asked, have you started German lessons yet? Honest answer, no. I think I suggested in the selection process that I would try and brush up my German, but my feet haven't touched the floor since the elections, so I haven't yet. But I'm thinking about learning Spanish. How about you?
I'm going to start French lessons in January, and the reason I'm going to do French is the staff in the Parliament tend to speak French, and obviously we go to Strasbourg, which is French speaking, so the staff speak French there, and I think it would just be good to be able to talk to the staff in the building in their own language.
It's polite, isn't it?
So I'm going to have a go at French.
Great. So question number 2 from Kitty in Middlesbrough was?
Well, this is one for you, Jude. How do you rate the chances of TTIP being ditched?
Well, I think it's quite difficult to say at the minute what will happen with TTIP. The negotiations started 18 months ago, summer last year. It's a very contentious debate. Red lines have clearly been set out by the Socialists in the European Parliament, saying we don't want to see public services in it, we don't want to see an investor-state dispute settlement mechanism in TTIP, and we want to ensure that our standards are maintained and not lowered by any agreement. I think whether it's ditched will depend on whether the negotiators reach those red lines. If they don't, then I think TTIP will stand a very difficult route in the European Parliament.
And we've had a lot of emails from people in the North East saying, you're about to vote, how are you going to vote? I'm right in thinking, aren't I, that there isn't about to be a vote?
No, there's not. TTIP's a long way off conclusion, so we as MEPs will only get to vote when the final deal has been concluded. What we're doing now in the process is we're making sure that people's concerns, all those thousands of emails that we've received, are fed into the negotiators, into the UK government and into the Commission to let them know what people are concerned about, and we're following the negotiations very carefully, but ultimately we'll get to say yes or no at the end of the day, and that's likely to be in several years' time in reality.
So no votes either in the next few weeks or in the next few months?
No. Number 3 came in from Dave. Very contentious issue, this one. If you thought TTIP was bad, this has bells on it. What powers does the European Union have to sanction member states when member states act against the EU's own rules? For example, when if the UK decided to act to restrict the flow of EU migrants between states. So what do you reckon to that one?
Well, if that happened, if the British government said that people from, say, Eastern Europe couldn't come anymore to live and work in the United Kingdom, then that would be breaking one of the treaties, which would be very, very serious, and those individuals would be able to take the British government to court, and almost certainly they'd win, and the British government would lose. And the British government know that, and therefore I think it's unlikely to happen. We've got obviously the British government making, Cameron and the Conservatives making some noises that this is what they do. The reality is they can't under the rules, and if they broke the rules they'd be in deep trouble.
But there are some things that we can do within the rules, aren't there? I mean, there are things like we can stop workers who come to the UK to work sending family benefit back for children who aren't in the UK, and those kind of things. That doesn't involve any treaty change, does it? So that's some things that could be put in place pretty much right away.
There are things that a future Labour government could do, the current government could do. I mean, there is no right just to come and turn up in the United Kingdom. It's a right to come and work here. So you would need to have a job, and I think there's a discussion to be had about how long it's appropriate that you can look for a job. But the fundamental, I mean, I've got a cousin living and working in Hungary, a nephew living and working in Amsterdam, that is one of the great joys of being in the European Union, is that we can move around for our education. We've got over 1 million British people who've gone and retired in Spain or are working in Spain, huge numbers. And that's a right, and that's great that we've got that.
Yeah, it is. And I think one of the interesting things as an MEP is the number of questions we get from British expats living in other countries who are kind of concerned about what the UK discussion would mean for their rights and for their future, and whether they'd ultimately have to leave the countries that they've settled in and are working in and are paying into the system in. Right, Tommy in Sunderland, a well-known character, broke the rules. The rule on Facebook was you could ask any question, big or small, as long as you didn't ask algebra. But Tommy, as usual, broke that rule. So Paul, what is x plus y squared?
Well, I must admit, Tommy, I have absolutely no idea. I did theology at university, theology and religious studies, and I am not well placed to answer that question, and I'll be honest.
Fair enough, and I already put my clause on the internet saying I wasn't going to answer any questions on algebra, so I'm not going to break it now. I think politicians who keep their promises are a rare breed, and I intend to be one of them. Then we've got another Tom, popular name in the northeast, but Tom from Middlesbrough, who I went to school with, who's asked quite a detailed question. It falls in the remit of your committee, of the Environment and Public Health Committee. What are or will the EU or MEPs do to improve food labelling within the EU for people with anaphylaxis or severe allergic reactions? Has that come up yet in the first 6 months in the Environment Health
Not
Committee?
specifically on the Environment Committee, that issue. Labelling in general has come up. I think consumers, many consumers would like to know as much as possible about the things they're buying, which means if it's a relatively large product, you've got a relatively large box, so there's plenty of room. It's a bit of a problem when you get down into smaller packaging. But then you can put leaflets inside. And I think the Environment Committee, which I sit on, is very keen from the point of view of consumers to make sure that as much information is available as possible. So what are the ingredients? What are likely to be the effects of any food that's consumed from a health point of view if people have allergic reactions of one kind or another, as Tom is pointing out here. But there's other things as well. Is the product fairly traded if it's come from the developing world? And I think increasingly we're going to go down a road where there's going to be labelling which lets you know as the consumer whether or not the company that produced it is paying a fair amount of tax. So there is now a fair tax mark out there as well as a fair trade mark. It's pretty rare at the moment, but a company like Greggs in the northeast of England has been awarded the fair tax mark. They're very open about their tax practices, and that's great. So we'll see more of that. Glenis Willmott, who is the leader of the Labour group in the European Parliament, this is her particular area. So Tom, next time I see Glenis on the committee, I will make this specific point to her and see if I can get a specific answer from her as regards the question you've asked.
Fantastic. So they were the questions that we got on Facebook this week. We're quite keen to try this again in the future, so we'll put out a call next week. If you've got a question that you'd like us to answer seriously or not, then let us know and we'll do our best to get back to you.